Classes in session, hitting the books, college football betting show, Monday, December the 9th. And this is our first of 3 bowl preview shows. And our first of, I think we've got 5 shows left for college football this year on Mondays. And of course, we will be talking college football playoff as well on these shows. Every matchup from here until a national champion is decided. So looking forward to it. This show will cover all the bowl games. Well, first of all, we'll talk Navy Army as well. Of course, that's coming up next Saturday. And then we will talk all bowl games up to and including the Hawaii Bowl on Christmas Eve, December the 24th. And then at the end of the show, we'll give you just some early gut feel, early opinions, early thoughts on the first round playoff matchups that were obviously announced yesterday. So that'll be today's show.
Yes.
CMAC, the playoffs, the matchups announced, the bowl games matchups have been announced. It's a great time of year. What's not great is trying to handicap some of this, though, with the transfer portal movement, coaches moving around at this time of year. That's always the part that you've got to stay on top of when you're handicapping this postseason.
Yeah, I think that's why we've kind of made a few more shows. And the last 2 shows just are the Final Four preview, the semifinal, and the championship game, which will be real quick. But yeah, it's just gone difficult. And then the change of schedule with, these first round games in now and everything that changes that goes on with the portal. I think that's so tough. And it's just tough to go over games that, in 3 weeks when the coach might be wanting to leave, where they're playing, the kids motivated, all the things that go into these bowl games that we've been doing every year. So I think a few more shows, but I think we laid it out well, where you can kind of go through everything. A little bit shorter show today. That way we'll be closer up. And what you mentioned, we'll go more in depth in the first round next week, like longer. Today we're just kind of hit on the 4 real quick because technically we got 2 weeks till, we have those games. So
no doubt.
I'm ready.
So looking forward to it. We got 5 shows left. And like I said, that's what I love about this time of year. We always got the back of our viewers and our listeners and our audience. We got every bowl game and every playoff game. We will preview it right here over the next 5 weeks and 5 shows here on college football hitting the books. Before we get into the first set of bowl games, we have the annual regular season finale coming up on Saturday, and it is the Army-Navy game, always the last game of the college football regular season. This one is taking place at the home of the Washington Commanders, and Landover, Maryland there, home of the Washington Commanders. Used to be called FedEx Field. Now it's called Northwest Stadium. Navy and Army in D.C. on Saturday. We've got Army. They opened a 4-point favorite in this game. They're now up to 6.5, even 7, showing up now with the Black Knights laying the points here in this matchup. 40 being the total here in this game. Army, a phenomenal season. I certainly think they're a little bit better than Navy. The question is going to be, do you want to now lay a full touchdown here with the Army Black Knights? And look, this is a special football team. We saw them just dismantle a very good Tulane team in the AAC championship game. Those Tulane kids, they looked like they wanted no part of that cold weather in West Point, New York.
Yeah, we touched on it. I don't know if enough people talked about that. It's going to be freezing fucking cold there.
A lot of Louisiana kids, a lot of Southern State kids. Yeah, exactly. And they were making mistakes, and they were not handling the cold like Army did. Fumbling and turnovers and just a lot of mistakes were being made by Tulane. And 2 weeks in a row, they got gashed on the ground. I mean, they could not stop that Army triple option attack. They did anything they wanted. 335 rushing yards rolled up on that Tulane defense by Army in that AAC championship game. And it was pretty impressive when it was all said and done. It was a great performance by them. This Bryson Daly is unbelievable. He's not only tough, but he's physical runner. He's got, I think, better speed, believe it or not, than you think. And Kanye Udo, one of the great tailbacks as well. Noah Short as well. I mean, this is just an excellent team. I mean, running the football. And the question is always going to be when you're playing when you're handicapping the opponent, can they stop it? But the thing is, Navy is very familiar with this. Now, Navy this year has deviated away from the triple option a little bit. So the difference, I think, with this year's Navy-Army game and maybe past years is, well, Navy doesn't see this type of offense in practice because Navy doesn't play full triple option anymore. under this Newberry here, the head coach. So it's a little bit different in terms of the prep here for the Navy midshipmen in this game. We'll have to see if Blake Horvath's good to go. He was banged up down the stretch of the season. Let's see if he's going to play. Brian Newberry really hasn't told you much, about that his play here going into this game. So we'll have to wait and see. Look, I like Army. They're the better of these teams, I think, this year a little bit. But it's always a question, do you want to lay 7 in a series that it's oftentimes difficult to lay points? Because you look at the last 3 meetings alone, there's a 4-point win for Navy in 2021. There's a 3-point win for Army in overtime 2 years ago. And even last year, Army got the better of it, and it was a 17-11 game. They only won by 6. So it's not an easy series, this Army-Navy annual rivalry game, to lay a touchdown or more. It's very difficult. And then I think as far as the total goes, how many shows have we done at this time of year, CMAC and I, on Hitting the Books, talking about the under in the series with Navy and Army? And you look at this series history, it's been an incredible run of unders. But here we have a total now 40, and this is the highest total that we have seen in an Army-Navy game since 2019. The total in that game was 40.5 the total, and it was 38 points in that game. And if you look at the recent meetings, in fact, the last 10 meetings, not a single one, CMAC, has gotten into the 40s. You go all the way back to 2014, 17, 38, 38, 27, 27, 38, 15, 30, 37, 28. Those are the total points that have been scored in the last 10 head-to-head meetings between Navy and Army. Now, why is this total higher? Because this is an all-time great Army offense. There's no doubt. And the numbers they've put up, the yardage they've piled up, their ability to be explosive, a quick strike offense, and now they have a little bit of a passing game with Daly, who can throw the football. He's pretty solid throwing the football, too. I think because of just how explosive Army's offense has been this year, it's why this total is higher than it normally is. But then you look at this, so you can understand, wow, 40 with this Army offense. Do we play it over? I can't do it. Not when you see this series history. 10 straight games have had fewer than 40 points. The under just in the last 10 matchups alone is 8-1-1 to the under, and it's even much stronger going back even further as far as unders in this series. So as much as I love Army, I don't like this price enough to back them. I do lean to the under, though, here in this game. It's very difficult to bet over 40 in a series that hasn't even cracked 40 in a very, very long time. CMAC, what do you think here, Navy Army?
Yeah, maybe this offense is so good enough. Like, this could – there's just no way I'm betting it, though. This is under nothing. Like, I just – no way, no how. One thing I've loved out, really, especially the last few months, too, has been the Army defense. Like we just saw against Tulane. I mean, and those touchdowns were kind of late, especially I think the last one. But they shut down some teams, especially down the stretch, and looked great. Here's the thing on the side. I think under the touchdown, yeah, it's a little bit, you have to lean to Army. There's just these teams, they hate each other. I mean, this is it. Yep. You know, I know Army, of course, that game was huge, and we talked about it. And man, what a game that they had. You were talking about Tulane. Just looks like they didn't want to be there in that freezing cold and got pounded on the ground. You know, it brought into all my how, oh man, Tulane had stopped all these triple options, and but I just thought Army was a lot better in Daly. He has been excellent all year long. So now there are 7s. See, I wouldn't lay more in the touchdown here. I just think this could be close. And what happens? I thought Horvath's been out. I thought Woodson played well against ECU. We had mentioned in that game, though, ECU just, for some reason, hasn't beat Navy and struggled with them for, 15 years. And they couldn't get it done, a red-hot ECU team. And, Woodson did well. I think he could play well if he has to start here and it's not Horvath. So, yeah, I lean to the under here. And in the end, I think this is a one-score, a touchdown type game. So as much as I love Army, I just want them a little more how we had them last week in the dog roll. I think that's huge. But if you really love them and you get under, because right now I don't think the rest of the way here the week there'll be 7s all the way out. Like, I'm pretty sure. I mean, we're already there. There's a lot of 6.5s. I think if you really like them, grab them today or tomorrow, because I think everyone's going to see what Army just did and going to jump on their bandwagon and move this to 7.5 maybe.
Yeah, no question. So that's going to be something to monitor, no doubt, as far as moving forward with the total movement and the line movement. Here's what I probably might do, because to even get the total at a better number and get Army at it, because I do like Army to win the game. I just don't feel comfortable laying 7. I don't do many same game 6-point teasers, especially in college football. I don't, and I do it only rarely in the NFL, but I almost never do it in college football. But because we've got a track record of these two teams playing close games, Army winning, the Army's won the last 2, but they've been all 1-possession games. I feel like if I can get Army down to -1, total up to 46 on a 2-team same game two-team teaser, 2-team 6-point teaser, get Army down to -1, the under up to 46. I like that a little bit. Army -1 teased down, the under teased up to 46. You get Army -1 and under 46. I like that. I think that's got a good shot here in this game. Something along those lines. If you don't feel comfortable betting Army at -7 or the under at 40, I would put it this way. I like betting the under at 40 more than I do laying 7 with Army with the current numbers. That's kind of where I stand here with this particular game. Yeah. But like I said, they're a special team. You know what I love about Army too, and why these kids are so disciplined and so, they're just leaders, and they're like machines. They won that AAC championship. First time in history Army football's won a conference championship. Incredible feat. And Bryson Daly and all the other teammates they interviewed after the game, they're already talking about beat Navy. We're on to the next one. It's they'll set the brief celebration, but it's on to Navy, because that's the game Army plans and prepares for the most all year round. The same thing goes for Navy, obviously, as well. That's what makes this and the Commander-in-Chief trophy's on the line. And that's not always the case when these teams play each other. But for the first time in quite some time, the Commander-in-Chief trophy will be decided, and the winner of this game will get that trophy. So big stakes coming up on Saturday for the Army-Navy game. Horvath is not confirmed out as of yet. Don,
just watch that.
Yeah, just keep an eye on that. But he may not play on Saturday. All right, let's turn to bowl season now. The first bowl game, and it's actually this Saturday. We have wait a couple of weeks till we get that first bowl game, but no, Saturday night, it's the Salute to Veterans Bowl, Montgomery, Alabama. South Alabama out of the Sun Belt, Western Michigan out of the MAC. We've got South Alabama 9.5-point favorites, 59.5 the total here in this game. Keep an eye. There's a talk about the quarterback injury for Navy. There's a quarterback injury for South Alabama. Gio Lopez, he got banged up at the end of that last South Alabama game. Questionable for this bowl game. Bishop Davenport would be in line to get the start if Lopez is a no-go for this game. It is worth noting Davenport does have 55 pass attempts this year for South Alabama, 60% completions, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He's got the ability to run with the football a little bit. So his numbers aren't bad, and he's actually been around. He was at Utah State. He played a little bit there a few years ago. So there is some experience here. It's not that all is lost for South Alabama here if Gio Lopez doesn't play. By the way, their top running back, Fluff Bothwell, great name. He's in the transfer portal. So it looks like he may not play in this game. More than likely, a lot of the transfer portal players will not suit up in their bowl game, which means Kentrell Bullock would line up next as the starting running back here for South Alabama in this game. Western Michigan, of course, a defense that I don't like very much. Hayden Wolf, of course, the quarterback, hungry like the wolf, a guy that was transferred over from Old Dominion. Solid stuff. Again, I liked what I saw offensively from Western Michigan, but the defense got ripped far too often throughout the course of the season. Be interesting to see how they fare here in this game. They did finish the regular season of the MAC with a 26-18 win against Eastern Michigan. It is worth noting they did play a team out of the Sun Belt, the Sun Belt champions, the Marshall Thundering Herd, who, of course, got it done against Louisiana on Saturday night. They lost that game, Western Michigan, 27-20 to the Sun Belt champs. that is something to keep in mind. They were competitive, Western Michigan, in that game. They were getting 3.5, and it was at Marshall. They lost 27-20. It was way back in September. Does that mean Western Michigan can compete here? We'll see. Western Michigan, also one thing to point out with them, laying points, not always been great. They've been a little bit better in that underdog role. They haven't been in the dog role much, but, up and down when they've been asked to lay points. Given the concerns about Lopez's status, I kind of lean at least initially here I haven't bet this game yet, but I do lean initially here to Western Michigan. Probably difficult to not lean over the total in this game because South Alabama offensively was really good. And even if they go to Davenport, I think he's capable. Especially with the Western Michigan defense not being great. But the Western Michigan defense, look, I know they shut down Eastern Michigan and Central Michigan the last 2 games, but this is also a defense that got ripped by Buffalo, ripped by Ball State, ripped by Bowling Green, ripped by Northern Illinois, and this is probably a better offense, South Alabama, than all those teams, or at least as good. So I lean Western Michigan initially. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, we'll touch on this constantly because it's going to change, and that's why we're kind of covering these first few games, but these even will going up, like you mentioned with Bothwell. So just, I don't want to say it too crazy, but just go check everything out, in these games, what's going on with people. But he's a big key to their offense in this one. I get why there could be points, high total. These defenses aren't very good. Can South Alabama, if Lopez is out, take advantage of Western Michigan? Because their secondary wasn't very good. They were near 120 kind of all year. I think they finished right around there, 116. They gave up over 250 through the air. And there's not a ton of teams in the MAC that can just throw it around either. So we'll see if South Alabama, could take advantage of that. I mean, this is in the Crampton Bowl. This is Montgomery, Alabama. It's just that you got to look at that side of it. So, but this team is laying 10 and kind of been hit and miss all year long. When I look at it, I think Western Michigan can have some success because I just don't think South Alabama has a great defense. So right now at this 10, I take the points with Western Michigan, even though it's not the best, place maybe to go to here. Western Michigan, Alabama. I think they can hang around in this game.
All right, so that is on Saturday. The next bowl game is next Tuesday, December the 17th.
That's the only bowl game, right, this weekend?
That's the only bowl game on Saturday.
Yeah, right. This one's on
bowl
Tuesday. Yeah.
The only FBS bowl game on Saturday. Yeah, it is proximity. It is proximity to obviously a much closer venue for South Alabama. But how's South Alabama going to get excited? Like, they don't even get to travel out of their own state to play Western Michigan, a mid-tier MAC team. There's been situations
exactly
flat in that kind of situation. They don't get to travel. They're playing a team that's not exactly going to excite them and be enthusiastic about it. So that's the concern. It's not just the matchups anymore, especially with these early bowl games. It's intangibles. It's motivation. Is South Alabama kids going to get fired up for not really moving much, far, not going to a sunny destination or anything? You're just there in Alabama against, like I said, middle of the pack MAC team, Western Michigan. That remains to be seen. All right, Tuesday, December 17th, Frisco Bowl. This is, of course, in Frisco, Texas, Toyota Stadium. Memphis and West Virginia. Memphis 2-point favorites, 56.5 the total in this game. Some movement toward Memphis because West Virginia opened 1.5-point favorites. And, of course, Neil Brown's firing is a big reason why. You got an interim makeshift coaching staff likely going to coach this bowl game for West Virginia. And that's usually a bet against situation. Not something you really want to bet on with so much influx going on. When coaches get fired, players transfer out as well. That is something you got to keep an eye on here for West Virginia. Believe me, especially now with the transfer portal in play, coach firings at the end of the year are not exactly things that I'm rushing to bet on in bowl games for those teams that are affected by them. And that's why I'd be reluctant at the moment, at least, until I gain more information of who's playing and who's in and who's out, to take West Virginia, especially, like I said, with a makeshift coaching staff. Because as we always said, and I remember the late, great Dave Malinsky saying this for years, listening to him, when the coaches that are the interim coaches, the interim coaching staff after the head coach gets fired with the team and they've got to coach the bowl game, what is their focus? Is it preparing for Memphis, or is it getting their resumes prepared and polished for their next opportunity, job-wise? That's what you have to look at in these situations, and that's why it's not always a thing I like doing, and that's betting teams in bowl season when they just fired their head coach, and right now they got an interim coaching staff taking over the reins. Memphis, meanwhile, not a team I've loved by any stretch of the imagination this season. I mean, we've talked about this for years. I'm not a big fan of their head coach, Ryan Silverfield, but I will say this about Memphis. Could argue that their two best performances in quite some time were the last two games where they beat the hell out of UAB, which isn't saying much because UAB's had a dreadful year. And then Tulane was the very impressive win, outright as double-digit dogs, beating the Green Wave 34-24 and really crushing Tulane's playoff hopes. And that win over Tulane forced Tulane to have to go to West Point to play Army for the AAC championship game instead of Army going to Tulane for it. So that ended up being a costly loss for Tulane, a big win, almost a spoiler type win for Memphis. We like, obviously, their offense. What was really good about that game against Tulane was the up and down run game with Mario Anderson got going for Tulane in that game. We'll see if it can have success here against West Virginia. The West Virginia team defensively obviously had tons of issues during the year, 411 total yards per game allowed. They were ripped in the secondary, which obviously Seth Hennigan is the type of quarterback that can do some damage throwing the football against a team that just surrendered huge big plays all season long against the pass. When you've got Rock Taylor leading them at the receiver spot, certainly could create some big plays. I definitely understand the movement to Memphis. I think anything less than 3, I would be looking to take Memphis here. I wouldn't want to lay points with them. They're not a lay points with team, Memphis, but as long as they stay below this key number of 3, I think it's Memphis or pass here in this bowl game. What do you think here, C-Mac, Frisco Bowl?
Yeah, because there's just a ton of question marks with this West Virginia program that, until who they're going to hire at head coach, it's always like this lull period. And everyone, wants to sign their resume and get it all and get a job somewhere in the end. And this West Virginia team just wasn't good all year. They weren't good, especially defensively. And it was time for Brown to go. He had been in the hot seat basically a couple of years and really this year. And I'm glad he got out of there too. It was time for a change. And they got beat. Ken Hennigan, the secondary was awful. This team was one of the worst in the country. I think Hennigan can have some success. You know what? He was so great in that Tulane game, just efficient. Like Mario Anderson got going, but he's like, forget that game here. Bavano, here 22 of 29, 218, 2 touchdowns. Like Seth Hennigan does that. Bingo. They're winning this game. I thought the Memphis defense played better all year. I didn't want to lay points with them. We didn't. We talk about constantly when they were playing these bad teams. Don't lay 2 touchdowns, blah, 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 and then catch them as the dog. They're short favorites here. They basically just have to win the game. I'm leaning that way because they're going to lose a lot. And again, this is his swan song. Anderson, a bunch of the defense, they're going to have to deal with a bunch after this game. And even a few guys leaving beforehand. I mean, everything's kind of happening right now with these. It opens up right now, the transfer, as we're on right now. So, and then goes on throughout the week. So pay attention to that. But yeah, I leave Memphis here too. Frisco in Texas. I think they can win this.
Chad Scott, the offensive coordinator, is the interim head coach right now for West Virginia here in this bowl game. But again, is he going to be retained by whoever takes over? Probably not. He's thinking about where am I working next? Where am I going to go? That's the thing. That's why it's difficult to bet on the teams with the makeshift coaching staff in the bowl game, because I can guarantee you these coaches are thinking more about, okay, where's my next employment going to be? Where's my family going to move to? Where am I going after this? Rather than, we're working all day, all night preparing for Memphis. You know what I mean? I mean, that's human nature. Yeah. And
just watch everything. Who's going to quarterback here for West Virginia? Because that's been back and forth, or one of these guys going to leave. So
I thought Garrett Green might go in the transfer portal.
So did I, but
hasn't happened yet. But it could. Doesn't mean it won't. It still could.
Exactly. Yeah. So watch that. Just keep an eye out on that for this game.
And we also have to kind of predict where the line is going to go. And my guess is it still could move further, especially if we see some transfer portal movement, which I think is possible, especially when they officially announce who the guy is going to be as head coach for West Virginia. We could really see, and it could be Rich Rod. I'm hearing rumblings that Rich Rod's in the discussion to coach West Virginia for a second stint.
Crazy.
Yeah, so what's old might be new again in Morgantown. So keep an eye on that, but might be a reunion there with Rich Rodriguez. All right. Boca Raton Bowl, Western Kentucky, James Madison. We've got the James Madison Dukes, 7-point favorites here in this game. The total sitting at 53.5, 54 across the board here in this one. JMU, of course, a pretty good offensive team throughout the course of the year, no doubt. We'll see if that carries over to this bowl game, but obviously they've got a pretty athletic quarterback, Alonzo Burnett. George Pettaway running the ball, pretty solid receiving core, and all things considered to be 8-4 for this program this year, with Cignetti going to Indiana, new head coach obviously taking over the reins. A lot of players transferred out of James Madison when Cignetti moved on. It was actually a pretty solid coaching job, all things considered, by Bob Chesney, who I think was a great hire for James Madison. This guy's going to do good things. He's a good head coach. He did great stuff at his previous destination before he got the JMU job. I believe Holy Cross, the FCS team, is who he coached, and did a really nice job. They were always in the playoff. They were always a pretty good team. It was a good hire, and I think 8-4, all things considered, with what he had to deal with this year for James Madison, was pretty solid. They lose to Marshall, that crazy game in overtime, which is what got Marshall into the Sun Belt Championship game. They actually lost their last 2 games, James Madison, so they sputtered the last 2 games. They lost outright as a 7-point favorite on the road at App State, who had a disappointing year. And then they had the loss to Marshall, 35-33 after that. Meanwhile, Western Kentucky gets absolutely destroyed in this Conference USA Championship game by Jacksonville State, 52-12. It was not even close. First thing you always have to look at, especially this year with Tyson Helton's Western Kentucky team, and especially with the opponent for Western Kentucky, does that team do well running the football? And when you look at James Madison, the answer is yes. They're 30th in the country at 190 rushing yards per game. It's a team that really wants to have the run game be a focal point of the offense. And you look at Western Kentucky, and all year they've been one of the worst teams in FBS college football against the run. And we saw it on full display. Jacksonville State just ran the football right down Western Kentucky's throat. So I'm looking to see, let's make sure that nobody transfers out. I haven't seen any movement yet. Looks like all hands are on deck at the moment for James Madison. I say James Madison team total over is something I've got circled here, because I cashed a ticket, CMAC, with Jacksonville State team total over Friday night, and it couldn't have been easier. Like 52 points. They scored on almost every possession. Big chunk plays in the run game, explosive plays in the run game. James Madison's capable of doing the same against a team that has just been so awful defensively against the run, like Western Kentucky has been. So that's probably the lean right now for me in this game. As long as nobody's departing here for James Madison, we don't see a lot of transfer portal movement and transfer portal departures. I don't see how they don't run up big points here with that run game against this awful Western Kentucky run defense. So that's what I got my eye on. And I'd probably prefer the team total for James Madison rather than the -7. You could lay the 7 too, but I think I'd just rather hone in on the team total over for JMU here. CMAC, what do you think for the Boca Raton Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, that defense, 130th, 220, and it just would come and go too at times. That defense, especially if you could run it, get gashed. One thing as the dog though, Western Kentucky and early on in the year covered numbers. When you go back like to BC, of course they were going through things. Toledo, they were small dogs. So that was one thing. When they started laying points, I just flipped on them and they started losing like crazy. And they got their ass whipped. I mean, Jacksonville State just ran all over them. So James Madison should be able to do that. James Madison, when they play at home, their defensive numbers were unbelievable. They hit the road and their numbers just went the other way and got burned. So I don't know how good this defense is. And as the year went on, I thought started to slip a lot more and more, and we started to see overs. So I get why you like James Madison team total. Like if this is even lower too, I'll go full game over because I think Western Kentucky can score here on James Madison. Now we got to wait a little bit on who's in, who's out, of course, but I think both teams could have some success here in this game. So I lean over.
Yeah, the full game over did cash as well in that Western Kentucky Jacksonville State game. Although obviously a lot of the legwork was done by Jacksonville State to get that game over the total. But I think it could get there maybe for the full game as well. But definitely JMU team total over. I've got that circled. We'll see closer to kickoff. Make sure everyone's ready to go. There's not many starters leaving, and I don't think there will be. I think there's actually a team, James Madison, that you'll get a solid, good effort from them.
I think both teams mostly will be there.
Yeah.
I think Velican will play.
The only concern for them is the disappointment, right? Losing in the conference title game. But you have 2 weeks, or at least a week and a half to get over it. Actually, just a week, pretty much, because this is next Wednesday, this game. As is this game, next Wednesday, December the 18th, the LA Bowl, SoFi Stadium. We've got California and UNLV. Cal 2.5-point favorites, 51.5 total in this game. Obviously, the thing we have to talk about here specifically is UNLV's mindset. Where are they at? Barry Odom, obviously departing to become the head coach of Purdue next season. Not shocking because of the job he's done at UNLV, that he would look for a Power 4 program job, and now he's got that with Purdue. But my gosh, Godspeed to him trying to resuscitate that program. Because I'm telling you what, Ryan Walters left it in shambles. So we'll see if Barry Odom can do a resurrection project with Purdue football. But don't put it past him, because look at the job he did at UNLV in 2 years. Absolutely outstanding. But he departs, obviously, well-liked, and the players, obviously love playing for him because look at the results. Del Alexander is the interim coach here for this bowl game. And again, though, this is not a situation that screams a bet-on situation involving UNLV. I don't like backing teams that just saw their head coach either fired or depart. Now, Neil Brown was a firing. This was a departure for another job. And that can sometimes be even more difficult for the kids to respond because of how attached they were to Odom. And look at how well they played under him. So UNLV is not exactly a team I'm running to bet. Not to mention with Odom last year, we know what happened in their bowl game. Against Boise State. They got ripped. I mean, it was a rough bowl game. Last year for UNLV when they had Barry Odom on the sideline and all hands on deck. Now Barry Odom goes to Purdue. Now you're not sure who's going to be there next year with a new head coach, obviously, that's going to be coming in. So a lot of influx right now for UNLV. Meanwhile, you've got Cal coming into this bowl game with, certainly a more steady coaching situation with Wilcox and his staff still in place. They are coming off a 38-6 loss to SMU in their regular season finale. But I think as far as excitement for this bowl game, why wouldn't you be? You're 6-6. You're a team that, has had some lean years. I haven't seen anything as far as players departing. I think they're into this game. I think you're going to get a solid effort from them. And I don't know if we're going to get that from UNLV, given the situation with Odom stepping away and moving on to Purdue. Now, it's going to be interesting to see. There is Fernando Mendoza's health. He was ill and did not play against SMU. That's another thing about that loss to SMU. Don't put too much stock into it because Fernando Mendoza didn't play that game. He was ill and missed that game. Let's not forget, before that, he played pretty well this year for them. 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 3,000 passing yards. And it looks like, as of right now, he's probably going to get – it's not an injury, it's an illness. So you've got to believe he's going to have enough time to feel better for the bowl game. So I'm assuming Mendoza is going to be back. Chandler Rogers would get the start if Mendoza does not play. And, of course, he's the one that got the start against SMU. Really struggled in that game. So it does matter that Mendoza plays, in my opinion, here for Cal in this game. But I'm leaning to California and the Golden Bears here, laying less than a field goal. It's just too much moving parts right now with UNLV. CMAC, what do you think? LA Bowl.
Yeah, this is the way, because when you've had Odom there and all the success, like, I have a feeling kids are going to go here. So this is like the one you need to wait on who's in and who's out.
Sticking around like we are, and some of these other, big time players, Catalan and Ricky White and, That's the question. Are these guys sticking around? Ricky White might be going in the draft, actually. So, yeah, he won't be going back. I think he's draft eligible.
He might not play. This is like a game he might not play at all.
Guys that want to sit out and not risk getting injured and prepare for the draft. It's another thing you got to factor into a lot of these bowl games too.
Definitely. I mean, this is a short trip for both these teams too, to this game. And Alexander, the interim coach here, wide receivers coach, just a guy there. I think he's just stuck up for this game. Yeah. So I don't know if they're really looking.
He's filling his resume. Yes. He's not burning the midnight oil scouting that California defense. I can guarantee you.
Yeah. I mean, I saw Cal. They hired Auburn's ex-coach. He's supposed to be their offensive coordinator, Brian Harsin. I don't know what that changes. Maybe going forward to next year. I just saw that earlier this morning too. What it has to do with this bowl game, really. And California just been I think, kind of a disappointment all year long. The flashes of good games then being horrible. It's hard to get at. But this could be a game they get up for if they have a little bit more than UNLV, they could win. So just a total wait for me on what we see here.
No doubt. I love it. We got Fernando Mendoza in the chat there. I don't think I'm playing either. There you go.
Fernando, man.
Fernando, come on.
Thanks for telling me, brother.
Yeah, you should have told me that before I bet Cal already. Actually, I did place a small Cal bet. But again, a lot of these bets, like I bet Memphis already. I bet Cal already. But these are small bets because I don't want to put the whole the whole stake on it and then find out, whoa, this guy's out, this guy's out, this guy's out, and whoa, things
change.
Which
happens.
So, but I do want to get down at good numbers. And I think Memphis is at a good number that might move. Cal is at a good number right now that might eventually move. So that's why.
And then what we hear about, we could talk more and more as we get into these games, which we'll try to on, is just motivation of everyone in and out. And then you got to try to get with like people that are tight and beat writers. If like sometimes they're just not motivated to go play. They're 6-6. There's all these distractions. They're leaving their lane and they get their ass kicked. There's zero motivation in these bowl games. It's not like the old days bowl games where they're excited to go. These kids are like ready to bounce and leave and get money somewhere else. Like no one's like excited. St. 1980 here.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, I see that team. Oz Hoodie, Bill Belichick in conversation with North Carolina. Wouldn't that be?
That's crazy.
That's
crazy.
Just that it's one thing. Now, apparently the conversations are fluid and ongoing and serious, but doesn't mean he's going to accept the job either, and because I think there's still part of him.
Why would he want to go do that? Doesn't he have like a 24-year-old girlfriend now? He's 73 years old.
I don't know if that would work. He seems like he's a little more aloof now that he's out of the NFL realm for this year. Like he's on television everywhere now, and he's got the 24-year-old hot girlfriend. And now you're all of a sudden, for the first time ever, you're going to go to the college ranks at this time of your life in your 70s. It's just, well, it'd be a little aloof thing to do for Hoodie. That's the way I see that, no question. All right, next up, we've got the New Orleans Bowl. This is on Thursday, December 19th. Georgia Southern, Sam Houston State, Caesars Superdome, of course, home of the Saints. We've got Georgia Southern, 5.5-point favorites, 46.5 the total here in this game. Now, this is Sun Belt versus Conference USA. And this year, there's a pretty big gap between the two conferences. That being said, Sam Houston State's got the makeup of a team that can play that physical brand of football that might give themselves a chance to hang around here in this game. Now, first thing you have to look at, again, when you're talking about Sam Houston State, if they can't run the football, they're not going to move it on offense. They have to have success running the football because the passing game with Hunter Watson is spotty. I don't think the receivers are that phenomenal for the Bearcats either. So if Sam Houston State can't run the ball, they're going to have issues. And I think
they should, though.
But, yeah, when you look at the Georgia Southern defense, it hasn't been great. They're giving up 180 rushing yards per game. So there's a pathway, in my opinion, for this Sam Houston State defense, or Sam Houston State run game, I should say, to have success here against the Georgia Southern run defense, which has not been good this year. Georgia Southern did finish the season strong. They did lose as touchdown favorites to Troy, but they also beat South Alabama outright as underdogs, Coastal Carolina outright as underdogs, and then they finished the season with a win against App State to get to a solid 8-4. They just missed out on being in the Sun Belt Championship game. As far as both of these teams go, I don't see much movement as far as the portal at the moment. Looks like all the key cogs are still there. J.C. French, the quarterback for Georgia Southern. I'm not seeing a ton of departures, if any, for Georgia Southern in this game. Of course, Sam Houston State. Now, the only thing for them is the running back injuries. Jay Ducker, DJ McKinney are questionable, but that's going to be a lot of time to heal between now and Thursday, December the 19th. So they're going to have a lot of time to, get back from injury for this game. Hunter Watson's good to go. Of course, he came back the last game for them. So, I think both teams are going to want to play well here. I don't think motivation is going to be much of a concern. I think both teams will want to show up. I just like the fact that you give me a good defense, and Sam Houston State is, that can run the football, which they do, against a team that can sometimes struggle to stop the run, Georgia Southern, and you're going to get points with that team. I'm interested. So right now I lean Sam Houston here in this game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Wow. Ding, 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 ding. You just hit it. Better defense, and they can run the ball, and they're the dog here, catching 5.5. I'm on Sam Houston in this game. Just way better defensively. And Georgia Southern has a pretty good offense. And down the stretch, the defense looked a little bit better against some of these teams like you touched on, Coastal, App State. So, I think this game could be close, but I think having those points with Sam Houston will be big in this game. And especially if Sam Houston can run the clock to their game with the better defense, 20th overall, to Georgia Southern's 120 overall. And you hit on the numbers, the run. It's what are they here? Sam Houston, of course, that's what they want to do. 30th, 190. They gave up 1 to 80. Does Georgia Southern? I think they'll have success. And yeah, just look to who's in and who's out. I think most will be here. Big game, Caesar Superdome. I leaned under. Georgia Southern more of a little bit over team, but the defense has played better.
Oh yeah, clash of pace.
I'll wait on that.
Over pace with Georgia Southern, under pace for sure with Sam Houston. Yep.
Yeah, but I don't know how big it was, Georgia Southern. I just thought their defense got a little bit better down the stretch, but I don't know what to make of it. It's still, the numbers were awful. But yeah, so I'll wait on that total. But yeah, give me Sam Houston.
I just saw the Cal UNLV spread click up to -3. Yeah,
I think it only goes more.
I was going to say that's exactly why I said moments ago that won't hurt you to lock in Cal right now. And just for the sake of getting a good number, and if you get a little wishy-washy and a little leery of, betting Cal for whatever reason down the road, you can always come back the other side and take a better number with UNLV and try to middle. Or you can keep the great number you got with Cal. But either way, like I said, it doesn't hurt you to take Cal right now, because I think we're starting to see that move up to 3 now from the 2.5 as we record this show. All right, let's go to Friday, December the 20th. We've got the Cure Bowl. Ohio and Jacksonville State. We got a pair of conference champions doing battle here in this game. Ohio 2.5-point favorites, 52 the total. And it's unfortunate they're playing each other, C-Mac, because what I often like to do, especially with the group of 5 teams, when they win their conference in the conference championship game, a lot of times I like to fade them in the bowl game because, they had their big moment. That was the pinnacle. That was the big accomplishment of the year, the crowning achievement, winning the conference. The bowl game is sometimes a bit of an afterthought, or a bit of a, you go to a mediocre bowl game for winning a conference, it almost feels like a bit of a letdown at times for some of these teams that after winning because I've seen it a lot in the last few years. Team that wins the MAC or the Sun Belt or the Conference USA, and they're playing a team that didn't win their conference. That team that won the conference, they're actually flat and they don't play well. And they're not quite as enthusiastic about the game as you would think. But here we got 2 champions playing each other. So it's kind of like pick your poison. You can pretty much, with both of these teams having won their conference championship, throw out motivation and just say, handicap the matchup. Who's going to have the better of it, X's and O's and in the trenches, and who's going to have the better matchup. We also have coaching instability both ways going into this game because for Ohio, the MAC champions, and what a performance by them. What a performance by them. My goodness, dominating Miami, Ohio, the defending champions like that. It wasn't even a ball game. It was extremely impressive. No question about that. And they absolutely take care of business. in that game, but they have seen their head coach, Tim Albin, depart and take the job with the Charlotte 49ers as their new head coach. So he's out of there. You're going to have an interim staff now for Ohio coaching this bowl game. Brian Smith named the interim head coach here for Ohio for this bowl game. And yes, for now, Rich Rodriguez is still there with Jacksonville State, but might be a question of when, not if, he decides to take a next or gets hired, because his name's connected to a bunch of different openings, including West Virginia. So is he still going to be here by the time this bowl game rolls around? There could be an interim staff for the Gamecocks as well by the time this game rolls around. So definitely some things to keep an eye on. I haven't moved on this yet. My first thought, though, would be, gosh, I really like the way Ohio's played. And when you look at this Ohio team, they've got to have that ability, though, to be able to defend the run. Because if you can't defend the run playing Jacksonville State, you're fucked. You're going to struggle. You're going to have a tough time of it. And Ohio's defense, CMAC, 5th defensive.
They're the real deal.
Country.
I mean, for the MAC, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I know it's the MAC. It's not a ton of great teams and consistent run games and consistent offenses. But when you're holding teams below 100 rushing yards per game on average, you're doing something right. So matchup-wise, you got to like it for Ohio, that maybe they can bottle up this vaunted rushing attack of Jacksonville State. And if they can probably win this game. So I do lean Ohio. But like I said, the one thing I don't like is the makeshift coaching staff situation with Albin going to Charlotte. I don't like those situations. And even though I think the matchup could be in Ohio's favor with their good run defense against this Jacksonville State team, I'm not sure. I like to, again, lay points, even if it's just 2.5. Lay points with a team with a makeshift interim staff in the bowl game is not something I'm excited about doing. CMAC, what do you think here? Cure Bowl.
Yeah, hats off to Ohio. That was a great game. Navarro, few questionable things. He dropped it but picked it back up. A couple were in other hands, but because he still can make mistakes. But other than that, he had a great game. I mean, he threw it pretty good. He threw for over 200 yards, 20-27. And I think he ran for 67 and a couple scores. So, but Ohio, that's when I looked at this game, has the better defense. Jacksonville State, though, can, and still I think will be able to run it. At times they could get stopped. And you kind of look at it, like when I went back with these two, so many question marks. Smith now the interim coach. It's a total weight. Like, you take a team like when they played better competition, Kentucky, they were able to run it on Ohio. But like Jacksonville State's not Kentucky, so what team are they? But they're the better defense, flat out. So I'd lean to them in this game. But this is total weight for me because I think Rich Rod's probably gone. All the stuff you want to wait before this one to hear the news, who's in, who's out, and who's motivated. It's just a fact. I gotta wait.
I will move on the Ohio side. If Rich Rod gets plucked by some other program, and then Jacksonville State's coming into this bowl game with an interim coach and an interim staff as well, then I'll be more excited about taking Ohio, because then it's both teams with an interim coach and an interim staff. It's a wash. Then you really just go ahead and you take, well, who's going to win the matchup? And like I said, that run defense has the potential for Ohio to give them that win, because, again, that's the key to Jacksonville State. You shut down the run game, you're going to have a great chance to
and Ohio, if everyone's in, I think they could run it on Jacksonville State. That's a little bit of the difference. Jacksonville State defense, we thought we were going to be better, got gashed early, played somewhat better, second half of the year, but I don't think they're great.
No, that'll be like I said, they played good against Western Kentucky, but that Western Kentucky offense didn't play well down the stretch at all. I don't know what happened to Kentucky's offense down the stretch.
Exactly. It was. Yeah.
Remember that Louisiana Tech game they played too, and it was like they couldn't get out of their own way?
That was crazy.
Unbelievable.
I had Law Tech. All right. I'm so happy. I'm like, holy shit. How are these guys 12-point favorites?
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, so let's not forget that. Yes, Jacksonville State's defense was good, but that Western Kentucky offense, my gosh, it kind of tanked down the stretch of the regular season as well. All right, this game is also on Friday, December the 20th. It's the Gasparilla Bowl, Raymond James Stadium, Tampa Bay, home of the Buccaneers. We've got Tulane and Florida. Florida, 12.5-point favorites, 50.5 the total. This has actually gone up even more since I put the Marquee up there, 11.5, up to 12.5. And look, for Tulane, the big news is Darian Mensah, their quarterback, has hit the transfer portal. He will not play in this bowl game. Now, before we get a little too carried away, because certainly the betting markets are getting carried away with this news, their two remaining quarterbacks on the roster are Ty Thompson, an Oregon transfer, who has thrown, I believe, let me just count it up here, 31, 42, 77 pass attempts in 4 years, 3 at Oregon, 1 here at Tulane, 11 pass attempts this year. So he's got some experience behind him. And the other is Kai Horton. Kai Horton's been at Tulane for a few years now. He was here when Willie Fritz was the head coach. In fact, I remember Kai Horton getting in as a starter for at least a handful of games when Michael Pratt, the former quarterback here at Tulane, got in. And Kai Horton. So they have some experience. They have a decent amount of experience here with these two quarterbacks. One of them is going to start, Ty Thompson or Kai Horton. We assume it's going to be Thompson because he's listed ahead of Horton right now on the depth chart. But they do have experience, both of these guys. They've both thrown a decent amount of passes in their college football career. And you got the bowl practices for John Sumrall to, get them ready to rock here for this bowl game as well. So, they may not be lost for Tulane on offense just because Darian Mensah's gone from the program. That being said, Tulane did not finish the season well. They looked like they kind of had all the fucking air taken out of their balloon by the loss to Memphis, which took away the playoff, any chance of the playoff for them, which took away the chance to host the AAC championship game. Instead, they had to go to West Point, New York in the frigid cold and play Army there. And you saw how well, or in this case, not well, they reacted to it, getting absolutely whipped. And all of a sudden, the run defense has fallen apart for Tulane the last couple of games.
All those cupcakes looked great. Yeah, then exactly.
And that's the problem. And that's the concern in this matchup, because what's Florida's strength on offense? They want to be able to, especially with DJ Lagway, a very mobile, athletic quarterback, you want to be able to have the run game work. And for a long time, it was looking like, pretty good against the run, Tulane. And don't forget, too, about that Army debacle for the Tulane run defense in the AAC championship game. John Sumrall had given up 9 points in 3 previous games combined against a triple option offense in his coaching career between Troy and Tulane. He had given up 9 points in 3 games against a triple option team prior to Friday night against Army, when his defense got absolutely lit up and couldn't stop anything in that game. So you have to take that with a grain of salt, that this is just a Tulane defense that's fallen. 69 points given up the last 2 losses to Army and Memphis for this Tulane team. Mensah out. And by the way, from an excitement and an enthusiasm perspective, we obviously have talked a lot about how Florida fought the good fight for Billy Napier. They saved his job, the effort they gave, beating Kentucky, giving Georgia everything they could handle, taking Tennessee down to the wire, upsetting LSU, upsetting Ole Miss, and really ending Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss's playoff hopes by beating them. Whipping Florida State in the final game. This is a team that played their ass off, and they saved their coach's job. And a bowl game, I think, might excite Florida. This is a Florida program that's been down the last few years. It's a Florida program that, last year, when you look at it, it was a tough year for them, all things considered. They didn't go bowling last year, the Florida Gators, and it was a disappointing season. So even a minor bowl game like the Gasparilla Bowl, I have a feeling it's going to excite them. And I don't see any major player movement in the transfer portal yet for Florida. Put it this way, I understand why people are liking Florida, even at a big number like this. And especially with the problems we've seen from Tulane defensively, losing Mensah. And yes, Thompson and Horton have experience, but is it experience that's going to work against a Florida defense that, let's be honest, after a kind of a rough start to the year, it's another reason why Florida was pretty good down the stretch, was that defense really started to play a lot better. The shutting down Ole Miss, shutting down LSU, they shut down, throw out Florida State because their offense has been broken all year. But the LSU and the Ole Miss performance defensively,
they Florida, got turnovers too.
Very impressive. And they forced a ton of turnovers. So can Tulane move the football? And can Tulane stop the run? All of a sudden they can't. So I get it. People are laying it with Florida. I understand the reason for it. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think under 2 touchdowns, this might be the move. But I'd wait for everyone who's in and out with Florida. I mean, the winds were good down the stretch. They're going to have this break. And, yeah, are they going to be up for this game? You know, they saved his job. One thing, it just happened like an hour or two ago, but Summerall is to stay, too. They gave him a contract extension. And that's pretty big. And when all these, not only players are moving with money, but coaches too. So I think that's pretty big news for Tulane, and who's really down after 2 losses. Yeah. But they've shown, I mean, this coach has done great things there the last, few years. So that's good for Tulane. I think it's all right if Thompson or Horde plays as well. What about the defense? I don't know what to make of them. The last 2 weeks get killed, and I faded them both games. Well, if this goes over 2 touchdowns, maybe is there value with Tulane then? This one's the wait for me right now, because on paper, everyone's just going to take Florida here, right?
Yep.
Everyone's seeing what they last saw with Tulane getting their ass kicked, Florida playing well down the stretch. Just lay it, right?
It's just that simple, yeah. Just lay it. But
that's what people are. I think you should wait and do your due diligence on this game. But
you definitely wait. If you want Tulane at all in this game, you wait. There's no way you bet it now. Yeah, you'll get a better number closer to kickoff for sure with this one. All right, Myrtle Beach Bowl. We've got Coastal Carolina and UTSA. Meet. We got the Roadrunners, 6.5-point favorites, 57.5 the total here in this game. Coastal Carolina, a team that 6-6 is really a perfect illustration of their season. It was up and down. It was all over the map. They had some great wins. Remember, this team beat the Conference USA champions 55-27 the first game of the year against Jacksonville State. But this is also a team that lost 39-7 at James Madison, 38-24 at Troy, 26-6 at Georgia Southern. And then they bounced back their final game. They beat Georgia State 48-27. So this really was a very erratic, inconsistent Coastal Carolina Chanticleers team this season under Tim Beck, the head coach. Now, what will we get from them here? We still have a ton of question marks at the quarterback spot for them because Ethan Vasco, by the way, has entered the transfer portal. That is significant. That's the guy that's been starting this year for Coastal Carolina. This was announced that he's entered the transfer portal, so don't expect him to play in this bowl game. Noah Kim, a guy that they got in the transfer portal, also entered the transfer portal. So we've got Coastal with both of these guys, Vasco and Kim, their top 2 quarterbacks, entering the transfer portal, and probably a good chance neither of them plays, which means we could be down to Tad Hudson getting the start. And I'm looking at I don't think he has a single pass attempt yet.
No. You know what I was going to say? Who?
Yeah, exactly. Who? Yeah, who? Yeah, Tad Hudson in this.
Tad Hudson.
Again, Ethan Vasco in the transfer portal, Noah Kim, the second quarterback in the transfer portal, kind of makes me think that, we're going to probably see Tad Hudson. Now, again, our bowl practice is going to help him a little bit to get a little bit of footing here and get comfortable in the offense, perhaps. But not exactly a great bet on situation by any stretch of the imagination. And then for UTSA, certainly played their best football down the stretch. 4-2 straight up, 5-1 against the spread their last 6 games of the season. The offense started to really get rolling. Now, some of those teams were pretty bad defensively, like Temple, like North Texas. But they also put up 44, and they beat Memphis 44-36. Owen McCown looked a lot more comfortable later in the season. And after some struggles early on, of course, you've got Robert Henry with a great running back. This David Amador, phenomenal receiver down the stretch as well for UTSA. This is one where I'm kind of interested in a team total for UTSA because I think they can move the ball on Coastal's defense. You start to look more and more at the Chanticleers' defensive numbers, and you start to look at who they faced. Georgia Southern, they gave up 27. Georgia's 26. Georgia State 27. Marshall, they gave up 31. They gave up 34 to ULL, 38 to Troy, 37 to Old Dominion, 43 to Virginia. UTSA is in the ballpark with those offenses, especially when Owen McCown is playing at a high level, which he is down the stretch. Like if you're giving up 43 to Virginia, You're giving up 38 to Troy. You're giving up 34 to Louisiana, 39 to James Madison, 31 to Marshall. You could probably give up at least in the 30s here to UTSA in this Myrtle Beach Bowl. So I lean over for the full game because UTSA defense is still a little shaky. But the thing I worry about is, will UTSA's defense get a break from facing a third-string quarterback that's never thrown a pass yet at the college level? That could help UTSA's defense here. So I might just zone in and focus on the UTSA team total over here for this game. CMAC, what do you and lean to lay in the points as well with UTSA. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, it's all big with the third-string quarterback. When I put this down too, when I was going through last night, was the team total, because one spot UTSA just was great at home. Like they on the road, I know they played like Rice, some teams that were a little bit better defensively. But I remember that game with Tulsa. We know how bad Tulsa is. They got way down here, that crazy shootout there at ECU. They lost early, 30-20. But I think that this Coastal team, I couldn't figure them out. This is one team this year, Pavano, that have a beat on teams that I could not figure them out at all. Short trip for them here. Will they be motivated with the third stringer in there? I don't know. And both teams don't have great defenses. Can he maybe move the ball on UTSA? That was just these defensive numbers awful and even bad on the road. So I think the team total is a really good look if you really don't want to lay the touchdown with UTSA and wait on them, who's in, who's out a little bit. We got ways to go, make sure with them, because we're Monday. I think some more dominoes are going to fall here with guys in and out the next few days.
And with the location of this game, you could say both ways for Coastal. Obviously, this is their home field. It's where they play all their home games.
Yeah, it's right here.
South Carolina, Brooks Stadium. You could say, well, they're going to have all their fans there, Chanticleers, for this game. But you could also say, we're playing at home. We don't get to travel anywhere for this bowl game. You could look. It could be a downer. It's really an individual perspective.
I've never found it that big. Yeah. Well, like UNLV stay at home for the Vegas Bowl. Like I don't know if it is really that exciting.
I guess want to travel. They want to see the Bahamas, or they want to see California, or whatever the case may be.
They don't want to see Laramie, Wyoming.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, some not.
Those bowls are fun. Yeah,
that is a factor, definitely. That this is a home game for Coastal Carolina because the Myrtle Beach Bowl is always on their home field in Conway. But again, how excited are they? Maybe they want to go someplace, to play their bowl game instead. So
that's why the team total, because UTSA. When you look at it, they're 0-6 away from home.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. They lost every game.
Yeah, exactly. The road record not good. And this is kind of a true road game because of the fact this is Coastal Carolina's home stadium here for the Myrtle Beach Bowl. That's why you're right.
Will it be like a regular home game though? Yeah. The atmosphere that you get in October to now, when probably people are out. It's Christmas. It's vacation. It's maybe not going to be the same. I don't know. That we'll see. So it'll be packed.
No doubt. All right. That by the way, I want to make sure everyone's aware of that game on Monday, December 23rd. That game, the Myrtle Beach Bowl. It's an 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific for Connor out on the West Coast start time. So it's a real early one. And the reason they're doing that is because they want a doubleheader on Monday, but they're never going to put a college football game at night on a Monday night against Monday Night Football, NFL. So why. You got the early doubleheader that Monday. That's the first game. This is the second game, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on Monday, December 23rd. Famous Idaho Potato Bowl. And as soon as you see that bowl game name, you know where it is. Boise State's home field, the Smurf turf, the blue turf, Boise, Idaho, Northern Illinois, and Fresno State. Northern Illinois, 1.5-point favorites, 42 being the total. Very low total here in this game. Interesting matchup here. You've got, obviously, Northern Illinois, Thomas Hammock. Now, again, we've got Tim Skipper, interim coach. Is he going to be the permanent coach? Are they going to remove the interim tag and make him the permanent coach, Fresno? Or are they going to go out and seek, another head coach? So this is something to watch for, because I don't think it's a sure thing they're bringing back Tim Skipper full time. Because Tim Skipper was the interim coach this year for Fresno because Jeff Tedford had to step down for health reasons. That's not necessarily a sign that, Tim Skipper's going to be for sure named the full-time head coach following this season. So that's something to keep an eye on. Northern Illinois, a pretty good MAC team this year, 7-5, but they just had a problem beating the better teams in that conference. You know, they lose to Toledo. They did have the win at Bowling Green, which is by far their best win, but they did lose at home against Toledo, at Miami, Ohio, 20-9. Those are games where the offense really did struggle. We'll see how they fare here in this particular game. One thing I do want to mention here with Northern Illinois is that we have seen at least a semblance, of this football team, I believe, have some bowl success the last few years as well. So that's something to watch for going into this bowl game, because there's certain programs where in the bowl game they've done all right. Yeah, last year they beat Arkansas State outright as a dog, 21-19 in the bowl game. They didn't qualify for a bowl game 2 years ago. They did have a bowl game the previous year, 2021, against Coastal Carolina. They were 10.5-point dogs. They lost by 6. So they did cover the number in that one. So I believe both of those were Thomas Hammock years as well, because he's been here for 6 seasons now. So they're 2-0 against the number in bowl games, Northern Illinois. So keep that in mind. Meanwhile, you look at Northern Illinois, and obviously, if the team's going to have success on offense, this is another one of those teams where they got to run the football if they're going to have success. NIU is not a great passing team with Ethan Hampton in at quarterback, but they can run the football, and that is what they have to be able to do if they're going to have success. And they have great numbers running the football at Northern Illinois. And you counter that, and you factor that around with, or you compare that with Fresno and their run defense, Fresno, which is, a respectable 50th, 138.7 rushing yards per game allowed, which isn't bad. So who's going to win that matchup is going to go a long way. Fresno, meanwhile, though, interim coach, we'll see how they fare. Again, Fresno, the last few years in bowl games, when you look at their schedule, they did win 37-10 big against New Mexico State in the bowl game last year as small dogs. The year before that, they won and covered against Washington State in their bowl game. They won 29-6. The year before that, they won, but they didn't cover as a 13-point favorite against UTEP, but they still won the game. This is a tricky one, because you got Fresno with a decent amount of success recently, ATS in bowl games, and Northern Illinois under Hammock the last, 4 or 5 years, 2-0 against the spread in bowl games. So both of these teams have had good recent bowl success. Lean under, perhaps, because I think it's going to be pretty methodical for both teams to move the football, and you never know how cold it's going to be. And we saw the cold affect UNLV and Boise State in the Mountain West Championship game Friday night. So I could see this being low scoring. The question is 42 a little bit too low now for this total? But I could see it being a under game. Tough from a side perspective. I kind of lean NIU. I think there's a reason. I think they're the slightly better team. I think there's a reason they're favored, but Fresno has also had good recent bowl success. So tough one from a side perspective. CMAC, what do you think here? Famous Idaho Potato Bowl.
Yeah, this is the one that makes me just not really want Fresno and want to wait. Do I want Northern Illinois here? Almost a field goal, because they have a little more everything that checks the boxes when you go through a bowl game. So, it's like,
well, another thing too,
Skipper was considered for the job.
The reason I lean NIU too, Mikey Keen's hit the transfer portal for Fresno.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, Moss, their top wideout, is gone.
Yep.
And how do you have the guy, he wanted the job, you didn't hire him, but he's gonna coach the bowl game? I always hate that. They've already hired a new coach, and what's his name? Matt Ince. So, but he's not coaching this, so it's like,
yep.
So he's gonna coach. I always hated that. I mean, he wanted the job, you don't give it to him. It's like, oh, but coach the bowl game for us. But pat on the back, like, get out after.
Great.
I'm like, that makes me just not want. And then King gone, Moss, no way I could look at. I mean, Josh Wood, he's the backup here. Didn't play really much at all this year, right? When I was looking at this last night, he had a couple passes. I mean, 2 for 4. Is that what he has here? I have no idea what we get. And you talked about being cold there on the Smurf turf. I think Northern Illinois, just looking at it from right now today, on the 9th, I lean their way a little bit. But even them, backing them as a favorite, just me kind of like, Yeah, they're still playing Fresno here. Like, this isn't Akron. Come on.
That's true. Yeah. I lean Northern Illinois situationally, and you're right. I glossed over that, believe it or not, that yes, Fresno's already hired their next permanent head coach, Matt Entz, who was with North Dakota State in the FCS for many years as the defensive coordinator there, and then the head coach there, Matt Entz, for 5 seasons at North Dakota State with the Bison, always a great FCS program. Then this past year, he was linebacker coach, assistant head coach under Lincoln Riley at USC. And now he's the head coach with Fresno State. So there you go. They've already hired their permanent head coach. And now the guy that's been basically pushed to the side, Tim Skipper, you're going to say, coach up this bowl game? He's looking for a resume. He's looking for his next job. That's definitely situational advantage, in my opinion, to Northern Illinois for this game. Yeah. No question about that. That's now NIU or pass for me. And especially with Mikey Keene gone, too. Who the hell knows what kind of quarterback play you're going to get?
Exactly. Keene's in. Different. Yeah. I mean, he could play. We've seen him for years, but with not him there, no way.
Yeah, no doubt. That's definitely that's a lean. That's probably going to be a bet for me, NIU, as we get closer to a kickoff. All right, final bowl game that we'll talk about on this show. Christmas Eve, the degenerates will unite and gather around the television. Fuck family, fuck Christmas gifts, fuck Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. We're going to watch the Hawaii Bowl and try to make some money and bet this game. South Florida and San Jose State, Honolulu, the Hawaii Bowl, an annual tradition, of course, on Christmas Eve every year. We've got San Jose State, 2.5-point favorites. The total in this game, 62.5 across the board. Now, this is an interesting dynamic. San Jose State, relatively, well, not so much this year. It does cool off in the Bay Area this time of year. But generally, Cali kids, they're used to warm weather. South Florida is in warm weather all the time. These kids that play for USF down in Tampa. So it's not like you're asking a Central Michigan, right? Or Akron to go to the Hawaii Bowl, where it's actually kind of like a vacation for the kids. You get to get out of the cold and you get to go to the beautiful skies and beautiful warmth of Hawaii. Both of these programs reside in places that they're used to warm weather. So maybe because of that, it's less of a vacation, more of a business trip, and trying to get a W here for both South Florida and San Jose State here in the Hawaii Bowl. That's something to consider. What I do consider is Ken Niumatalolo's done one hell of a job this year with San Jose State to be 7-5. They flew over their win total. No one expected them to be this solid this year, but they've done it with an offense that's been very good. One of the best group of 5 receivers in the country, in my opinion, and Nick Nash, who's had an absolutely outstanding season for the Spartans. Now, Emmett Brown started the year at quarterback, kind of then struggled. They went to Walker Eget, and then Walker Eget kind of wasn't consistent either down the stretch. He had a terrible game, I remember, against UNLV. I still have horror nightmares thinking of that. 4 for 22 he was in that football game against UNLV. Now, I know the weather wasn't good. It still wasn't a great performance. I will say this, he bounced back big time against Stanford, in that rivalry game, their final regular season game. 67% completions, 4 touchdown passes. So Walker Eget was definitely a lot better in that victory. We'll see if the San Jose State offense can move the football here in this game. For South Florida, they obviously had Bryce Archie take over the reins at quarterback down the stretch of the regular season with the injury to Byron Brown. And it's going to be interesting to see, does Byron Brown come back here? He's been injured for quite some time. He hasn't played since way back in week 5 against Tulane. He missed the last 7 games of the regular season. So there's a decision that has to be made here for South Florida. Do they and because Bryce Archie finally started to play better and get more comfortable down the stretch. Do you stick with him here in the bowl game if you're Alex Golesh, the head coach? Or do you turn back to Byron Brown, who is probably still the better quarterback, but he hasn't played in a very long time due to injury? If Byron Brown's able to play, that's going to be the decision. One thing I like here is probably the over. I mean, that's the first. I find a lot of these Hawaii Bowl games, defense kind of takes a back seat. And I think when it comes to both of these particular football teams, the offense is better than the defense on both sides. The San Jose State defense can still be somewhat leaky. And I certainly think that of the South Florida defense, which just gave up 35 points to Rice, in their final regular season game. They went over the total in each of their last 3 games, 5-1 to the over in their last 6 games. San Jose State, we saw them give up 31 to Stanford, 42 to Boise, 33 to Fresno State, 31 to Nevada, 54 to Washington State, 31 to Colorado State. So they haven't been a great defense either, San Jose State. A lot of the games they've won has been because of the offense and the points they've been able to put up. So I'm looking at an over here, probably in this game, rather than either side. I think you can make a case for both sides because I think South Florida's a dog. You can make a case, and you can certainly make a case San Jose that they'll be excited, and you can make a case San Jose State will be excited because nobody thought they'd make a bowl game this year in Coach Ken's first season, and they have. So I think they'll be excited to play. So right now, the opinion I like the most in this game is the over, 62.5. C-Mac, what do you think here, Hawaii Bowl?
Yeah, that might be low enough. And even if Archie plays, which I can't back in, I mean, he could move it on this San Jose State defense. And one thing is South Florida is awful. I mean, they gave up 280 yards a game through the air, and that's what San Jose State wants to do. I mean, they threw average 325 all year, 5th in the country. It seems like they could have success. Now, who's going to be in and out? I mean, I don't think Nash plays in this game. Why would he? So I think there's a bunch of weight for that. They still have a couple other solid receivers. It's tough even with minus points here with San Jose State, to even take them. But I don't know. I think you just look to team totals or over in this game, like you mentioned, and it hasn't got that high. Right now, who's in, who's out, kind of weight. But I think it's kind of low here, 61, 62. This is the game, where you could definitely see some fireworks and some points in this one.
All right, so there you have it. Those are the bowl games that for this first of many bowl preview shows here for Hitting the Books. We'll do the next swatch of bowl games next Monday, the games from Christmas to New Year's Eve, and then the following Monday we'll do the games post-New Year's Day bowl games. So that's the schedule for that. But before we wrap up this show, we will talk for the first time, just briefly, some just initial thoughts on the 4 college football playoff first round games. These are taking place on Friday, December 20th and Saturday, December 21st. The first game, the only game on Friday, is this one, Friday night, December 20th. Indiana Hoosiers, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This will be ABC Saturday night or Friday night, December 20th. Sean McDonough, Greg McElroy will call the game. We've got Notre Dame 7.5-point favorites, 50.5 the total. In this game, we're going to get way more into the matchups, breaking down the numbers, breaking down the stats, looking at the quarterbacks, looking at the offense run, the run game, the pass game on offense, the run and the pass for these two teams defensively. We're going to get into all of that more next week on the Monday show, but we're just going to give you just initial thoughts. And the first thing I thought of when I saw this point spread, and I saw this number, strength of schedule is going to be talked about a lot about this game, where Indiana hasn't played anybody this year, and the one really good team they played, they got smacked down a little bit by Ohio State in that game. Yet let's also keep in mind that in that game, it was pretty close at halftime, and it was that kick return touchdown that Indiana gave up to Ohio State, and that's kind of when Ohio State started to take over, in that game and roll in the second half as they did. But it's a fair argument. Indiana faced a weak strength of schedule. But here's the thing I want to point out about Notre Dame, because coming into the season, if you base the strength of schedule on what the teams that were going to be on Notre Dame's schedule were last year, you would have said, it's still a pretty decent schedule. You got some good teams in there. You've got definitely some opportunity to be able to have success and be able to, test yourself throughout the course of the season. And there is some truth to that. But at the same point in time, I think when you look at just the way it went for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish this year, as far as what ended up happening to all these opponents they played, that's where you get a little bit more concerned, I think, about the Notre Dame schedule. Because when it's all said and done, they faced a lot of teams that didn't turn out to be that good. How good does that USC win look at the end of the year? USC had a mediocre season. That's not a great victory for Notre Dame. How great was, some of the other opponents, that they played this year? When they beat Georgia Tech, what's that? One of their bigger wins was Georgia Tech. Well, guess what? Haynes King didn't play in that game. They got Georgia Tech with a backup quarterback. that day when Notre Dame played them. So you can, I just find it almost hypocritical that people are going to just lambaste the Indiana strength of schedule. And yeah, it was weak, of course, compared to many other teams. Notre Dame was supposed to have a decent schedule, but none of these teams turned out to be any good this year. USC was a mediocre team. They played Georgia Tech, who was a good team, but not a great team. And when they played Georgia Tech, Haynes King was injured. He didn't play. He's the heart and soul of that football team. He carried Georgia Tech to almost beating Georgia last week in that rivalry game. Notre Dame didn't even have to face him in that spot. Even the first win of the year that Notre Dame had, which is probably their best win, Texas A&M. Texas A&M was a bit of an underachiever this year, inconsistent. So, yeah, you can throw all the stones you want at Indiana and their lack of good, tough schedule. Well, Notre Dame's schedule ended up being underwhelming and nowhere close to what maybe people thought it would be coming into the season, just based on the fact none of these teams had as good of a season that they were expected to have. USC and so many of these other opponents that were on Notre Dame's schedule. They played Purdue, big deal. Let's be honest, there were a lot of cupcake schedules here for Notre Dame. Not a lot of cupcake opponents, I should say, on Notre Dame's schedule this year too. We should acknowledge that. While Indiana was a weak schedule, but let's not act like Notre Dame had a murderer's row schedule. Fact remains, you got about a week and a half in time to prepare for a coach in Curt Cignetti, who's done unbelievable work with Indiana. Do we still have questions about Marcus Freeman in a truly big game, big moment, big spot? I think the answer is yes. He hasn't won that big time game yet. Let's see how he fares here. As you can kind of tell, at more than 7, I'm leaning Indiana here. This is the first in-state game between Indiana and Notre Dame since 1990. It's hard to believe these two programs have not played each other in 34 years, considering they're in the same state. But here we are. I'm leaning Indiana. I actually lean to the over too, because I think Indiana will have some challenges against Riley Leonard and this Jeremiah Love, man. Incredible run in the football. And we kind of saw Indiana at times get gashed by the run. Notre Dame might be able to move the ball. And I think for as good as Notre Dame's defense has been at times, I got to admit, I didn't love the way USC was marching the football against them the final regular season.
By the way, 2 pick sixes. They were moving it well. I mean, that kind of blew it open.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I didn't love that. I think the Notre Dame defense is good. I think a lot of it was weak offenses, weaker slate. Again, they got Georgia Tech with no Haynes King. Let's not forget that. Purdue stinks. I mean, you go up and down this schedule. There's a lot of Stanford's, rebuilding still. I mean, it's cool to throw all the shade you want at Indiana's strength of schedule, but if you're going to do that, you got to acknowledge this Notre Dame schedule was nothing to write home about either. All right, you got to acknowledge that, in my opinion. So you can't just say it only to Indiana and not acknowledge that's a little bit of an underwhelming schedule that Notre Dame ended up having this year too, with all these teams that were. USC was supposed to be great. That was supposed to be a phenomenal win for for Notre Dame. If they could go to USC and beat them. Well, USC stunk. Well, not stunk, but they were mediocre. They're a mediocre football team this year. That's not a big time win, in my opinion. It's just not. And they let USC march the ball up and down, as C-Mac mentioned, with Maeva in that game. So gut feel, initial lean is Indiana in the over here. C-Mac, what do you think here?
I think so too, because there's much time. I think Notre Dame's been kicking a lot of bad teams, ass, and they're good. And another, you hit on it, we'll hit next week a little more, is these coaches like Freeman, is it big time? Can he win these big games and win by more than a touchdown? Both these teams have been money ATS all year. So it's kind of tough if you've been backing both, who you want to back now. I mean, I've never seen Notre Dame team like this. They won 7 straight against the number, and all year they've been, ever since that loss to Northern Illinois, they've been money. And Indiana until Ohio State, of course, were darlings, winning every game and covering. But this is a lot of time to prepare for it. Here for Indiana, you talked about they hadn't played in forever. I think they're live here, and I really like Notre Dame. I've loved their defense, but I saw a little there with SC was moving it. like you were talking about, I mean, can Indiana do that? If Indiana takes care of the ball, I think they're in it. And I want to see, are we going to get to Notre Dame? I am very high on this defense. They've lost some pieces to it. Morrison, their top corner, and a few others. But I still think they're very good. So to me, this is a good football game. And I lean to catching 7.5 with Indiana.
Let me repeat this schedule again for Notre Dame. A&M by far their best win, no doubt. On the road at Cal Field.
Mm-hmm.
But Northern Illinois, the shocking loss after that. Then they beat Purdue, terrible Purdue team. Miami O, good Miami O team, but I think they knew they weren't going to get caught twice by a MAC team. The at Louisville game is the home to Louisville, I should say. It's a solid win. It's one of their better wins too. But after that, Stanford, not a big deal. Georgia Tech without Haynes King is not a big deal winning that game, in my opinion, because Haynes King was the heart and soul of that Georgia Tech team. So that win does nothing for me. Navy, kind of a paper tiger, weak strength of schedule. Florida State, horrible. Throw that one out. Virginia, not a great year. Throw that one out. Army was great, but Army, again, a huge step up for them. And USC, mediocre team. That win does nothing for me. So, yeah, you can bitch all you want about Indiana's strength of schedule, and you have every right to do so because it was a bad schedule for Indiana, weak schedule. But you at least got to acknowledge that Notre Dame, this was not a murderer's row schedule for them either this year. You have to at least acknowledge. Be fair. Be fair. Don't just throw Indiana into that pile and not talk about Notre Dame's schedule at least a little bit. That's all I'm trying to say. All right, the 3 games on Saturday, December 21st for the first round. It starts with the first of a triple header that day, SMU and Penn State. We've got Penn State 8.5-point favorites there in Happy Valley. They, of course, get to host this game. The total sitting at, it looks like 53.5 pretty much across the board here in this game. This should be a fascinating matchup. You look at all of a sudden what we saw from both of these teams offensively in their conference championship games. I mean, certainly Kevin Jennings and the SMU offense, we like them. He can throw it. He can run. They're very balanced. Penn State, look, their offense looked awesome against Oregon. That was as good as I've seen Drew Aller and the offense look. I got to give them credit. Singleton and Allen were running the ball well. Tyler Warren, the big tight end. Some of the other receivers, too, for Penn State had a big game, and they were just moving the football much of that game. But what the fuck?
That was wild. That was both teams. I mean, that was just, they were moving it, both teams, easily.
But here we go again with James Franklin. Say what you would. The offense was great, but can't win a big game and didn't because that defense was just absolutely horrific. They could not stop Oregon. They could not contain Oregon's speed. And that's a problem because guess what SMU has on offense? They don't have Oregon speed. They've got some pretty good speed as well. And if you're struggling to contain that like they were, how are you going to fare with SMU? And you got to lay 8.5? Yeah, you can tell I'm leaning to the Pony Express here a little bit, plus 8.5 in this game. And I think the fact that they got beaten by Clemson at the end with that last second field goal fuels them even more because they're going to think, well, there's still going to be people that think we don't belong. Alabama should have been in the playoff instead of us. Let's go there and show. It's almost like a chip now on their shoulder. People are still going to be ranting and raving about, SMU got in instead of Alabama. They're going to use that as a motivating factor at SMU to say, hey, we're going to show you we belong. And Rhett Lashley, I know, is going to beat that drum from now until Saturday, December 21st to his team. Make no mistake about that. And again, I know this is not Michigan or Ohio State or Big Ten anymore. This is out of the conference, but this is still James Franklin in a big game being asked to lay points. That lost it. Now, they're not a top 5 team, SMU, but they're still, top, what are they, 11th, I think, in the rankings? They were at SMU. Fringe top 10 team. Well, against top 5 teams, that loss against Oregon, James Franklin, it dropped into 1-17 straight up. 5-13 against the spread against top 5 teams. How am I going to lay 8.5 points with a coach with a fucking track record like that in big time games? I know this is not top 5 anymore. This is 11th ranked SMU, but it's still one of the tougher teams they've played. I can't lay 8.5. I will not lay 8.5 with this coach, and especially that defense after what I saw against Oregon on Saturday in the Big Ten title game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, can we get? The defense was a little bit better all year, but we saw them at SC give up 30 points and give up a ton early in that game. What do we get? The biggest thing I get to, because we're going to hit this next week a little bit more of these games. before they play. SMU, the 2T, like this Jekyll and Hyde, just an unbelievable, horrible start to that game. It was like they had a bad call. Now that I will give to them. That call about the quarterback getting hit, that was not that flag. That should have not happened at all. That was really, really bad. Clemson caught another break and scored. And the turnover, it just was all in front. But a whole different team the second half. And then we saw Clemson kind of the offense go to nothing.
Most of the second
prevent defense.
Yep.
Yeah, and they adjusted too. I mean, so that's the only thing with SMU. Like I saw this defense. I've seen this defense get ripped. I've seen this defense play pretty good at times. So I think Penn State will have success a little bit, their offense scoring. But no way, I'm not playing 8.5 with Penn State. Come on. We talked about this the other day on Saturday. And I was like, come on. Maybe SMU, they win this. And what, is this a big win for Franklin if he wins by 2 touchdowns? I don't know. Jennings has got to be a little bit better. He's not the biggest guy, but he's got some heart. He needs to take off and hold on to the ball. And if they do, because Penn State, I still think has a little bit of the better defense. But, hey, I mean, Oregon shredded them. So I think Jennings will have some success. I'm with you here. 8.5. Shmoo.
I like the over too. As long as keep an eye on the weather. Obviously, we're talking mid to late December in Pennsylvania, outdoors on grass. So you do want to be aware of snow, rain, wind, especially. But if the weather's decent, we should see points in this game, in my opinion. Here with SMU and Penn State.
Maybe Penn State will take it to them. We'll talk next week about it. But nothing. The offense did look pretty good. Sometimes there's just those games. I talk about these top 10 teams. They just get into shootouts. It's like nothing. The defense ain't working. They're not adjusting, and they just go back and forth.
Now this is a game I do not think will be a shootout. The next one in the first round, Clemson and Texas. We've got Texas 11-point favorites, 51.5 the total in this game. It was a nice start. Feasted on some mistakes from SMU, as we talked about, for Cade Klubnik and the offense. Like, wow, they're really doing okay to start. But then when the adjustments were made defensively by SMU at halftime, looked like that old struggling Cade Klubnik again. And the Clemson offense really didn't do a whole lot beyond halftime. But we're able to survive and hang on with a 34-31 win, which got them in as the 12th seed here in the college football playoff. Now they travel to Austin, Texas. Now, Cade Klubnik is from Austin, Texas, so this is like a homecoming for him to be able to play in Austin, a place where he's from. So I'm sure he's going to have family that'll motivate him, but I don't know if that's going to save him here against one of the better defenses Clemson's played all year. And I keep going back to the Georgia game, C-Mac, because Texas's defense is in that ballpark with Georgia. Clemson's offense fucking did not work against Georgia. And the last couple of years when they've played at Georgia, Clemson, it has not worked. I do not trust Cade Klubnik and the offense on the road at Austin to move the football up and down the field. Texas's defense is really, really good. And I think you're going to see them play well, bottle up Clemson again, contain Maffa. Brenning Stool I like, couple of decent receivers, but not the speed, not the perimeter weapons at receiver that we have seen Clemson have in the past, going back to when Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson were the quarterbacks. There were some elite playmakers at wide receiver. They don't have those guys right now, this Clemson offense. So I think Texas really bottles up Clemson's offense in this game. Can Texas score enough to be able to cut? Because this is one game
I don't know. No, they can't score Baveno right now in the red zone. And the field goal kicker is not good. That guy. I mean, yes, it's just the misses were bad when all that whole first half was at 260 to negative yards almost Georgia had, and they had 6 points. Like, it was like, wow, that killed them. And then they started the running game, opened up for Georgia, a good drive, and it was on.
The problem is, even if Texas's offense has a hard time getting going here against Clemson, I don't know if Clemson is going to, I think, be held down, and Texas could grind out like a 27-14 kind of win, and they just barely cover. I could see something like that.
It's good they're at home. Yeah. Yes. That's what. Yeah, I agree.
Put it this way: I don't trust Clemson. I will not be on Clemson here. It's just a question of, do I lay the 11 with Texas? And I got to admit, with Quinn Ewers, struggling a little bit at times. Like even in the A&M game, they had opportunities to really put A&M away offensively in that game, and they just really couldn't do it, and they let A&M hang around. I think the best bet in this game, as you can kind of tell for me, is the under. I think this total's gone down already a little bit, down to 51.5 from an opener of 53. My initial lean here is the under. I lean Texas, but I don't want Clemson, but I'm not rushing to lay 11, in a playoff game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, well, we'll get it on this. I like the under, but I like Clemson's team total under. Georgia found a little bit and got, like I talked about, started running it in the second half. Because they didn't throw it. Even when Beck went out of the game, they couldn't really throw it at all with the backup. But I think they'll run the football here at home and take care of business. I still think they have, and after seeing Penn State and Oregon, maybe their defense is at least one of the best, top 3. I think Texas, and they look great in that first half, and they should play well here because I think they can get to Klubnik. I think Clemson's a little bit of fraud. That great first half. We saw the bad Clemson that didn't beat anybody before, Gosh, so it's Texas here, but I think the Clemson team total under or the under in this game is a good look as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's actually an even better way to fade Clemson than lay the 11. I think the team total under's better than laying the minus 11 with Texas. I would agree with that. Rather than lay the 11 with Texas, you could take Clemson's team total under. That might be the best route. All right, the final first-round matchup. This is on the Saturday night, December 21st, at the Shoe in Columbus, Tennessee and Ohio State. Ohio State 7.5-point favorites, 47 the total. I mean, this is a miniature big game James Franklin developing right now with Ryan Day. 2 big games this year. Oregon on the road, you lost. Michigan at home, when you're supposed to be the far superior team this year, you lost outright as a 3-touchdown favorite. What makes me want to lay 7.5 with Ohio State? A little bit of a regressing Will Howard down the stretch as well at quarterback.
Well, bigger games.
Yep.
Yeah.
Against a Tennessee defense that is pretty damn good, and it's been the unit that's kind of carried the way for the Volunteers because, to be honest, their own offense hasn't been anything to write home about or consistent down the stretch. We were gushing over Nico Iamaleava early in the season, some of the numbers he was putting up early in the campaign. But we also see that when the schedule got tougher, you only put up 25 against Oklahoma, 14 in a loss to Arkansas, 23, 24, I think 33 against a really bad Ole Miss defense was there. Well, they actually had 36 against Vandy. Vandy, I think, kind of ran out of gas, though, a little bit. That's a good effort. It was by far one of their best offensive performances, but you're going to be able to move the football like that against Ohio State, which, defensively, that's not where the issue is. The Oregon game, they had their struggles. Will Tennessee, put 32 on the board against them? I'm not so sure about that. No. And obviously, we saw them play well outside of that pretty much all year defensively. So this probably sets up to be probably a low-scoring game too. Now, Tennessee's going to play fast with tempo. And I don't love betting unders at 47 when I know the one team is going to play lightning fast like Tennessee will. But you have to have the production. You have to have the efficiency. You have to put the points on the board still, even if you're playing fast. And I don't think we're going to see either of these teams lighting it up necessarily here in this game. So it's still a light lean to the under, but at anything north of 7, and I know I've got concerns about whether Tennessee's own offense is going to work here on the road on a Saturday night, December 21st at Ohio State. But I know I've seen enough worries from Ohio State and concerns about their performances in their bigger games and the better competition, particularly the Oregon game and the Michigan game. And don't forget the Penn State game, which was the one pretty solid win this year against the Big Ten runner-ups, Penn State. They only won that game by 7. They got to win this game by more than 7 against Tennessee. I don't trust them to do it. So right now the lean is the Vols at anything above 7. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, we'll see with Ohio State. Just a horrific game, losing to a Michigan team that can't throw the ball and Day. How do they bounce back from that? They that's what's big here. Do you trust them to do that at home and cover by more than a touchdown? I don't know, but I know they have a good defense. Tennessee has a pretty good defense as well. I know they play fast, but I don't know if they're going to be able to move the ball up and down on Ohio State. You talked about the total being a little bit low. I think it is too. But I don't know if we get a ton of points. Will Howard, I said early in the year, kudos, he's beating these bad teams, but I saw him in bigger games, and let's see it happen. And he's kind of proven what he is. So what can he do here? I think Ohio State could win this game. I just laying over the touchdown. I don't know. How do they come back from it? Maybe they kick the shit out of Tennessee. But I think Tennessee's defense is good enough to stay in this game. And Tennessee's got to try to do something with their offense. At times and on the road, it's just been stale when they've played better, teams in the SEC, but man, especially on the road. So even at that pace, I don't know if they can really do anything. So I lean under in this game, even at the number. Under.
There we go. Now, those are just initial thoughts on the college football playoff.
We'll go over them again on next Monday.
Next Monday. Absolutely. One more time with a little more depth. We'll throw in a few more stats and more matchup breakdowns as well on next Monday's show. But there you have it. Shout out to everyone in the chat. 92 live viewers across all platforms. Hit the like button. We appreciate it. Shout out to everyone that's in the chat joining us. Platinum Paul, Dom, Bama Boy, Sean Kelleher, Justin McKelvey, Justin McElvey, I should say. Kong's Clips, of course. Great season, Kong's Clips with the college football. Congratulations. Great to see all the profits you've had. Jay Peasy, Fernando Mendoza, T. Moss, Joey Harb. We appreciate everybody. Coin in the chat. G. Martinez. We appreciate everyone joining us here for this edition. And again, we've got 4 more shows left. Next Monday, December 16th. The following Monday, December 23rd. And then we're back for 2 shows in January. January 6th. And then January 13th, which is 1 week before the national championship game. That will be our final show. It'll be a national championship preview show. We'll do it a week before the game, and it'll be up on the channel for a full week. You'll be able to just watch it whenever you want, get your fix for the national championship game. So that's the remaining college football hitting the book show schedule for the rest of the season. Of course, on Friday, we'll be back with college basketball. This week, when we do the college basketball show, the Friday card is very light. There's only a couple of games that are big. A lot of it's going to be the Saturday look ahead on Friday.
Yeah, we can go through some of those.
Saturday. We should have lines for Saturday's games when we do the show at 2 o'clock Pacific time on Friday afternoon. So we will have a college basketball show. I had to miss last week the show. We had to miss it because I was doing some appointments and stuff. But we will be back this Friday.
Man, it works for me. You're not twisting my arm. But, he's not the biggest card.
We'll do one this Friday. We'll make the people happy. We'll do a show this Friday. But most of it's going to be look ahead to Saturday because it's going to be a much bigger card with much better opportunities on Saturday this upcoming weekend in college basketball. Great stuff. CMAC, final words before we say goodbye.
No, shout out to everyone in the chat. Do me a favor, hit the like button. That's all we ask for. And get us to some subscribers. Tell everyone you have. Get us to 500. We're almost there. We're at the hours. We're almost there too. So we appreciate that. I'll get out all these videos, you guys. And shout out to everyone that supported us all year, on this channel that we've done and on the show. I believe in it. I think I love doing it. And shout out to all you guys that love it and hit us up. I really, really appreciate it. That is it. I'm ready. I think it's great how we kind of set it up. A little different year. So we got to be here the 23rd. Hopefully we won't be here that long. And we'll be out of here.
Well, that'll be a short show. You only have 8 games coming up on December 23rd. Tomorrow's going to be the long.
But they were important. Yeah, next one a little bit longer, the 23rd. But they were important. I think we had to do it. Those games. Yeah. So
no doubt.
That's it. Great man. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, always good to work with you, my friend, CMAC. Doing this show for years, and of course we enjoy it. We wouldn't be doing it if we don't enjoy it after all these years. That is for sure. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button on the way out. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoy Army Navy. Enjoy the first set of the bowl games coming up. and good luck. And we will be back with you next Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We'll go into the first round games more in depth and the next set of bowl games post-Christmas coming up next week on the next edition of the College Football Hitting the Books show. Until then, class dismissed.